There is one thing that you guys should know about me, and that is that I'm a huge history buff. I love all things history. I mainly focus on military history, but I'll absorb almost anything. If I'm not watching anime or something else that is pop culture, I'm usually either watching or listening to a documentary series or watching a historical drama. Usually that's the case. And so when I heard they were making a Cleopatra documentary series, I was really excited because I thought it was going to be like the Roman Emperor one or the Ottoman Empire one they have on Netflix, where they have dramatization and it cuts back to experts telling a faithful story of the events, keeping everything as 100% historical as possible, because it's not a historical drama. It's essentially a documentary, a visual documentary, one that it has a lot of production value basically. But right off the bat, it seems like they changed a huge part of what makes Cleopatra Cleopatra, and it seems with the actual documentary series itself that they're not really going faithful with who she was as a person and what her rule was, what the dynamic events of that era actually are, and what they actually mean. Plus, the actress that plays Cleopatra has come out and essentially dismissed the complaints that people have had, mainly Egyptians, and this is something that went all the way to the Egyptian government, where the Egyptian government is actually looking to sue Netflix over this. Cleopatra is played by a colored woman. A black woman is playing Cleopatra, but it's not just Cleopatra being black. It is essentially almost every Egyptian in the show is black. Now, that's not like the worst thing possible, because Egypt is in Africa, and in southern Egypt there are a lot of mixing with Nubian people of Nubian descent, so that portion isn't as crazy as the way you would think it would be. Cleopatra, on the other hand, she isn't black at all. She is Greek. She is from the Ptolemaic dynasty, from the Seleucids, the heirs of Alexander the Great. They are essentially Greek. She was a Greek woman. She was fair skinned. She had, I think it was black or brown hair. And yeah, that's a huge part of what makes her her, because she came from the dynasty that conquered Egypt. She wasn't Egyptian in the sense that she was ethnically Egyptian, and she definitely wasn't black. That, in my opinion, is something that they changed to meet an agenda. And I feel like it just isn't something that I would have put in a historical show. If this was basically a story, like having fun with it and trying to tell a drama about Cleopatra, if this was just a drama, I wouldn't care, because it's not meant to be historical. They take liberties with stuff like that. But it is a documentary series. So fundamentally changing her race is what I would call blackwashing. Same thing as whitewashing. Just like that one movie, I think it was called Gods and Kings, where they made all the Egyptians white. That was whitewashing. This is blackwashing. It's the same thing. Now, the Egyptians are upset about this casting. They're pretty pissed off. But the actress that plays her, Adele James, dismisses the Egyptian complaints, saying that blackwashing isn't a thing. She also says, "I find it sad that people are either so self-loathing or so threatened by blackness that they feel they need to do that to separate Egypt from the rest of the continent. You have to understand the history behind the show, the history behind the character you're playing." I think her dismissing the real complaints of real Egyptians is also showing a lot about not only her character, but exactly what the show is trying to accomplish here. And they're trying to make a fake history with just race swapping, essentially, instead of giving Africans their own stories that, you know, are actually really intriguing. There are a ton of African queens out there in different kingdoms that there could have been stories about, but no, they took this from the Egyptians, and I understand why the Egyptians are upset. Now, I haven't watched this series at all, because I really don't want to watch something that's not, you know, historically accurate. And I think that that's a good call, because I've seen some TikToks where people are showing clips of the show, and they make Cleopatra out to be almost like she is like a fighter of the people, like she is like super feminist.
The appeal of Cleopatra is that we imagine her, that everyone can imagine her in their own way. I imagine her to have curly hair like me, after civil escape come.
What? I can imagine her to be East Asian with blue hair, but that doesn't mean it's true.
Has not flooded at the same level. This isn't Cleopatra's fault. Natural occurrences never are.
Open the world brain stores. Let's get these people fed.
That's what you're supposed to do. Cleopatra was not known for caring much about the poor. The
Now, there's a
helmets are
civil war
wrong.
going on in Rome. Once again, it's about power. It's two men.
As if she's blaming this on the patriarchy. The same is happening in Egypt, and Cleopatra is partially a fault. This is simply not grounded in history, and it's not how you should write a documentary.
She was very opportunistic, and she was in the middle of a civil war against her brother who had the throne. And that's why she wanted the Romans' help. That's why she hid herself in rugs to see Caesar, because she wanted to get him on side, and she was said to be an extremely charismatic person. She didn't care about the commoners of Egypt. She just wanted her throne. It was all about being selfish. Now again, I haven't watched the documentary series, so I'm only going by the clip that you just saw. But if this is just a gist of what's going on, I really don't have any reason to watch it. I don't want to watch something that is pushing an agenda on history. I feel like history is interesting enough on its own to tell, and there is a lot of interesting history in Africa about different monarchs and their struggles. I think those stories need to be told instead of taking stories from other people and changing it to whatever you want. Even the guy on the show says that this is what I imagine her to look like. You don't need to imagine her. People drew her and make copper coins of her in vases, a lot of them. So we kind of have a really good idea of what she looked like. At this point now, I just feel bad for the Egyptians.